Hello, I've had a couple of requests on the channel if I would show how to go from a clean install of version 2 through the modifications that I've made, and I've found the simplest way to do that is to make it available to copy and paste each one as I go through. I'll be programming all of this on a MCU, but you'll find it works equally well with a X-Touch or any other 8-channel controller. I think there's enough info about as to how to install version 2, so I'm going to go from post-installation. First off, just open all of the zones in a text editor in plain text, and let's look at the zones. The home zone is the starting state for CSI. Any modifications you make to the buttons, track or master track zone affect the home zone. I use the button GlobalView to return to the home zone, and we'll program that shortly. The track zone and the button zone are where I'll be doing all the modifications in this particular video. In later videos, we'll look at selected track send and selected track receive. In later videos, I'll be doing a lot with the track effects menu. I'll explain why I don't really use the master track zone. I make a great deal of use of the subzone zoom. I do use markers extensively, as you might know from other videos, but I've yet to program anything into this subzone. Okay, a pretty brief look at zones. Every time you modify a zone file, you need to refresh the surface. Search for refresh all surfaces in the action list. If you opposite click, you'll be able to copy the selected action command ID. Now go into the button zone. We're going to assign this to the enter button. Depending on how your text editor works, a good practice is to search for the widget or button name and see what entries you've got under it. So for enter, I've got no action, that's on the clean install. So I'll delete that and replace it with a Reaper action, so type Reaper. Paste the command ID in. I'm going to add 2 forward slashes for trailing comments, and I always put in the trailing comments, opposite click there, selected action text. I can always copy and paste that back into Reaper to search for the command. My own descriptions didn't really do that. I need to run this manually from the action list first, just the first time, just to update the controller. Now when you press enter on the controller, you see the master fader move there. That means it's uploaded. There will be a few occasions where we need to make custom actions for hotkeys, but generally the idea of this is to copy and paste out of the YouTube description into your zones. As I mentioned briefly at the beginning, the included zones in the home zone are the buttons, track and master track. To get a proper understanding of how CSI works, I really recommend you use the wiki pages. A huge amount of work has gone into these, and the clarity of the explanation will help you understand a lot more about how CSI works. However, if you're described as what's called a visual person, or someone who just can't be asked to read, then let me walk you through modifying CSI version 2. Let's start with the button that takes us to the home zone, which is the GlobalView button. In the fresh install, we just go to the home zone, close all floating windows, close all effects chains. I want it to do more than that. I also want GlobalView to zoom out to show me the whole arrangement when I press it. Also, if there's a time selection, I want to use Hold and GlobalView to remove that. There are actually quite a few other commands happening in the background, so let's have a look at the GlobalView button that you're going to paste. The GlobalView button takes us to the home zone, and the home zone is an overview of the arrange. It unselects everything, so I'm not duplicating. I've had this problem before where I'll be working on a track and not realised I've actually got something else selected on another track. This avoids that problem. So unselect envelope, set all track automation mode to trim read. I can't write anything by accident. Jeff's just recently written this, ClearModifiers, brilliant. So when you go back to your home zone, you've not still got modifiers on that you have to unselect. And then you go back to the actual home zone, which is essentially exiting all other zones and goes to what's called the tracks and buses zone. Making a window set's really simple and quick. I'll show you how to do that in another video. The way I'm utilizing that, window set 1 is with the track control panel minimized, so a short name. And then I might have window set 2 for plugins where I've got a much longer name to read. You can switch between them. You might not actually need or even want this next instruction, set master volume to 0. I master a lot of music, so the master fader mustn't move. Can ruin the master, so I use this instruction quite liberally through other commands. Something else you might not want, hide master track in track control panel. I don't need to see that or access it in the track control panel when I've got it in the arrange on the right hand side there. The next two actions were included in the original file: close all floating effects windows and close all effects chain windows. Because this is going to be an overview, the home zone, I want to show all of the tracks. So whichever tracks were selected will stay selected, but I'll now be able to see all of the tracks in the arrange. Once I've got all the tracks in view, I want to hide all the envelopes for all the tracks, clean it up. And the final script is Archie script to zoom the track control panel and arrange to fit the screen. If you hold the global view button, it will do all of those things. And additionally, it will remove the time selection on top of that. Sometimes coming back to the home zone, you want the time selection or you don't. This is a quick way of unselecting it if you don't want it. Go and copy the global view actions out of the YouTube description. Go to your button zone, find global view and delete it. Paste the global view action list in. And I'm just going to press return at the bottom of that to give us space. And now save the button zone. Keep in mind, every time you modify something in any of the files, you need to save that before you go back to Reaper. If you don't, nothing's going to change. So we'll save this file, go back to Reaper and press the enter button to refresh all surfaces. Now let's look at the track zone. The pipe symbol at the end of these means it applies to all tracks. So display upper for all tracks is track name display. Display lower for all tracks is track pan display. Fader touch, if I move the fader, it'll override the lower display and give me the track volume. Alt and display lower, so it's only showing you this, it's not affecting anything, it's the automation mode. Control and display lower, again just the display of the pan width. Display lower was already showing track pan display, and the rotary is what will adjust the track pan. Flip speak for themselves, rotary push I'm going to change, record arm solo and mute speak for themselves. We'll have a look at how the select buttons work in a second. If we go to look at the wiki page about track, you can see that the reason I'm not using selected track is that's commonly used for 1 fader surfaces. I'm using track because it's for 8 fader surfaces. Again, the wiki page, a great reference for much more detailed information. Okay, let's start assigning some logical controllers to some of these things that are just displays at the moment. In the track zone, control and display lower TrackPanWidth display. If you type control and rotary and pipe symbol TrackPanWidth, now you need to save the zone and press enter on your surface to update the surface. Now pressing control will show you the width and turn the rotary will adjust the width. There's a very tidy way to resolve this. At the moment, mono in the track would mean turning the rotary to 12 o'clock or top dead center, and it's a bit of a pain. You can get to reverse 100%, no problem. Just rotate as far as you can and width 100%. Below control and rotary pipe symbol, type control and rotary push pipe symbol, track pan width, square brackets 0.0, 0.5, 1.0. Save the zone, press enter to update the surface. Now control and any rotary push will take the width to reverse, mono and 100% width. This is a great method of recentering the pans too. So below rotary and track pan, type rotary push, don't forget the pipe symbol, track pan, square brackets 0.5, space before and after each. Save that, update the surface. I'm going to mess with the pans and then just tap them and they'll all recenter. Now let's have a look at how the select buttons work. That's select, shift and select, and alt and select. Select uniquely selects individual tracks, removing previous selection. Shift and select will select all of the tracks between the one previously selected and the one you go on to select. Alt and select will add tracks to your selection. I feel like I've said select far too many times there. And if we go into the button zone and look at bank left, bank right, channel right, these just bank 8 or 1 on the controller. It doesn't actually change the channel in Reaper till you press select. Using the Jogwheel is a much kind of slicker way of doing this, and we'll copy and paste it in a sec. It's already programmed to go forward and backward by grid division. Adding the control modifier means the Jogwheel will go down through the tracks and back up through the tracks. And in keeping with the way the select buttons worked, add shift, Jogwheel rotary will select below or above, depending which way you rotate, Control again, just select the track. This is a quick way of selecting a track and then a group of tracks above or below, or both. Unlike using the select buttons, you're not limited in the range of tracks you can select. Now go back to this video's YouTube description and the second set of actions, which look like this. Make sure that's all that you copy. And we're going to paste those into the button zone. So back to the button zone, and below Jogwheel Rotary, which is already programmed, paste that in, save the zone, enter on the controller to update the controller, and I'll see you in the next one.